So here it is, Christmas of 2011. Today is actually Christmas Eve. Earlier this month, I went into a closet that I normally don't go into looking for last year's Christmas wrapping paper remnants, and I found a box with some VHSs in it. One of them was marked Bill Murray on Later, and to confess to you, I completely forgot I even had this thing. I had not looked at it since it aired. And it's kind of different. He doesn't really talk about his film career. He wasn't there promoting anything, it seems. He brought a jam box with him and was playing some music the entire time they were talking, and they just reminisced about people he knew, people he'd worked with, anecdotes from Saturday Night Live, and interesting events in Bill Murray's life, such as a couple of famous people's funerals he had attended. So, it's not really relevant to Ghostbusters, but it's very interesting to look back on and see again, and I thought you guys might enjoy it as well. So here it is, watch it or don't watch it. Merry Christmas and enjoy.
They wheel you back and forth from your room to the stage 3 times a night, starting around 11. You know, I saw Toadie Fields once do her act, and I thought that was pretty good. She'd lost her leg already at that time, and her act was basically built around the fact that she had only one leg, and she had like a closing song with special material that was written for someone with a wooden leg, and it was just crazy. And I just thought, I'm missing a point here by not having... I was very fortunate to have witnessed this sort of show business miracle, and to see that there was a possibility for anyone to make something work, as long as you had, like Sammy Kahn or someone to write some special material, to shape it for your own physical body or mental problem.
But even though you never played Vegas, you don't have a Vegas act. It's not like you haven't studied it. Like when you were a kid, you and Brian and some other kids, I guess, in the neighborhood were sort of in this club where you sort of mocked these Vegas guys or showbiz guys.
No, you're confusing me with Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland here.
Oh, that's right.
This was not in the neighborhood. We were full-grown adults who already knew how to break the law. But this was when we were living in New York, around the time we were doing the National Lampoon Show. And this friend of ours, Bob Tischler, we had what we called the Sammy Club, which was we would get together at this guy's house and we would watch the Sammy Davis Show, which was a spectacular show business freak show. And where people were constantly like breaking into tears and, oh, get over here, embracing and falling apart all the time, you know. And we couldn't get enough of this because it was everything. None of us had made anything in show business, and we couldn't get enough of this show, you know.
So the Vegas guy, the lounge guy, Nick whoever, Nick Springs, Nick Rails, whatever the situation was.
Yeah.
I mean, years of study went into this guy, whether you realize it or not.
Well, there was a lot of, there was just a lot of bad show business at that time. There was a miraculous period. The 70s is what it was. It was a horrible, some of the ugliest art, the most brutal architecture, the ugliest clothes. It was the 70s, you know, and that was sort of, it was just a really, you know, I think there was, you know how there are plates in the earth, you know, where there's like civilization on one side and not on the other? It's the 70s. Sort of had that break around 1974 or 73, it sort of cracked. And the late 70s were the bicentennial
and a collision, really, where, you know, a younger generation had access, and Saturday Night Live was a good example of it, but all those old showbiz sensibility guys were still around and for the most part on the air. They're not mostly on the air anymore. And they were existing side by side, which made it so fertile for you guys.
Well, it was amazing to have, like, Milton Berle host the show once. Well, there was a guy who really, I mean, he's been stealing jokes for like 70 years or something. You know, he's really been around forever, you know. To actually have that guy, and when we'd have these, like, showbiz guys on, you know, we just sort of surround them and stare at them, you know, and just go ahead, man. No, go ahead. We're watching, you know. It's like, no, keep talking. Keep talking. You know, you couldn't get enough of it. It was like a late night feeding, you know.
What was he like? Did he relate well to you guys, or?
Well, he's a monster. Bro was a monster, you know.
He was?
Yeah, yeah. You know.
Telling you guys how it should be done, or?
Well, there are a lot of guys that'll do that. I mean, I'll tell you how it can be done if you give me an opportunity, but...
I wish somebody would set me straight.
But he was, you know, it was just like he had his ways, you know, and he would set jokes and try to make them look like they just happened, you know, and stuff like that. You know, he'd say, all right, drop a crowbar right in the middle of my speech, you know. We'd go, oh, okay, watch this. So somebody drops a crowbar back, oh, NBC just dropped another show, you know, and it's like, you know, it's like, hey, he's fat. You know? So that kind of stuff. I enjoy it. I had to do a sketch with him where, you know, he was supposed to, it was some sort of a benefit for yeast infections or something like that. Some crazy thing that Rosie and Ann came up. And so he's supposed to come up on the stage to grab the microphone and say, make an impassioned plea. Well, you know, Burl does this thing where he goes to the back wall and comes from behind, you know, which is like vaudeville 101, you know. So
Right.
we're going through all these rehearsals, and I see him every single time. I know he's going all the way back to the back and walking in behind you, which is just like a real cheap upstage move is what it's called. And so I just let him, you know. So I just let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go. And, you know, we're going on. I acted like, you know, I was just...
Happened on Saturday Night Live, where you thought this whole thing is going to unravel. Somebody forgets their lines, or they can't get the props in place on time, or...
Really scary? Frank Zappa being the host. No, I don't know. What was really scary? Well, yeah, well, there was one guest who was on who came back to host, and it was St. Patrick's Day week. And they went out on the street to host they do these films. Gary Weiss did these films out on the street,
Yeah.
and this old guy used to be an actor here in New York, and he went to his old haunts. Well, his old haunts were like Sardi's, you know, and they're all bars, really. And so after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, you know, it was like, it was like a black horse walking down the middle of Fifth Avenue.
I don't know this. I'm truly guessing. Was this Broderick Crawford?
Yes, it was. It was.
Thank you. Do I win a prize?
It was Broderick Crawford and from Highway Patrol and also Mice and Men, and a really great actor. So he was blasted, you know, just totally blasted. And it was on a Thursday, which was our first day of shooting, and he rolled into the studio here around 4:30 or 5, a couple hours late anyway, 5,
Yeah.
you know, we start earlier. And he rolled in no kind of shape, and he said, "Don't worry, everybody. I'll be here 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll be ready." You know, we said, "Rod, we start around 1, you know." So everybody was truly terrified, and it was like, "Okay, Bill, you will cover Brod in these 5 sketches. Danny, you will cover Brod in these." So we had Brod covered every way but Sunday. Everybody had all his sketches. Well, in the Brod, not only nobody had to cover Brod, but Brod killed on air and was totally cool. And they fed him some line during there was some rumor about Hoover at the time, you know, and we had an FBI sketch about bugging the Kennedys and bugging Martin Luther King. And there was some line where Brod says to the other FBI guys, "Okay, boys, I'll see you in the sauna later." You know, which was just a throwaway, but which we knew would never get by the censors at all. So they mentioned it in the read-through on Wednesday. "Brod, we're not going to write this in the script, but if you think of it, boys, I'll see you in the sauna later." Well, in the meantime, since the time they mentioned that, he's been to all his hangouts in Manhattan and stumbled down Fifth Avenue in the St. Patrick's Day parade. No one's ever said a word to him because they're not even sure he's going to show up again. And at 11:51 on Saturday night, like 5 days later, Brod Crawford turns to these 2 FBI agents in blonde wigs and says, "I'll catch you in the sauna later, boys." And we all went, "Oh, he's such a pro." He's such a pro. He was a very good guy. Really a nice guy. Well, what the heck? It was St. Patrick's Day, and he was drunk. So what? You know.
Chevy Chase was on here a few years ago, and he said that Belushi was better in Second City and other places, actually better than even at his best on Saturday Night Live. Would you concur with that?
Well, something like that, yeah. I think John Belushi was the best stage actor I've ever seen.
Why?
When he walked on a stage, you could not look at anyone else. You couldn't look at anyone else. I mean, on TV, you know, it's diminished. You know, I mean, John was an enormous personality, enormous person. And just seeing him on a little TV screen just didn't do him justice. But to see him in life, to see how his weight distributed through his body into his feet, very graceful guy for a man who got pretty big.
Yeah.
He could still do kips and back rolls and flips and stuff. Incredibly graceful, but the force of the guy was extraordinary. And he had incredible good gifts on an improvisational level, in that he could enter a scene with a group of people and know exactly what was supposed to be done. And he could just direct the action coming in. Just from watching it from the side, he'd go, and he'd come in, and he would move the action where it had to go. He was very talented. I mean, extremely talented guy.
To the point where it almost sounds like even guys like you, or maybe Aykroyd, you can't speak for him, as good as you guys were, was he the...
Oh, John was the best.
Was he the center of it?
John was the best on the stage there ever was. For some reason, TV, although he was great on TV, it wasn't really his medium in a way. I mean, he He was in films, he was in TV, but on stage, John had no match. None. No match.